My daughter told me to leave our home. Then I uncovered my wife's betrayal. Can you imagine looking your own 15-year-old daughter in the eyes, only for her to tell you to leave your own home? And then, my wife, her mother, not only doesn't stop her, but doubles down, saying the house would be lighter without your rules. That night, my world didn't just crack, it shattered. But what I uncovered next was a betrayal so profound, so gut-wrenching. It wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about protecting my daughter's future from the very people she trusted most. What would you do when your family turns against you like that? My name is Mark, I'm 43, and for 12 years, I honestly thought Laura and I had a pretty good thing going. We had our daughter, Emma, who was 15 at the time, a typical teenager. You know? One minute, it's all about a lost phone charger. The next, it's a full-blown crisis over the meaning of fine. I was always the responsible parent, the one who remembered bills, checked homework, questioned endless expenses. Laura? She was the fun one, the spontaneous one, quick to say yes and worry about the details later. And for a long, long time, I actually thought that balance worked. I was so wrong. The issue wasn't just that Laura was softer or more lenient. It was that she started treating every limit I set, every boundary I tried to establish, as something Emma needed protection from. If I said Emma couldn't stay up late on a school night, Laura would chime in, "Oh, Mark, one night won't ruin her life." If I asked Emma to finish assignments before going out, Laura would sigh dramatically, "You make everything so transactional, Mark." And if I asked Emma to contribute a bit of her allowance to something she really wanted, Laura would sometimes secretly give her the difference, completely undermining me. Individually, these felt like small cracks, nothing catastrophic. I kept telling myself, parents don't have to agree on everything. I can be the strict one. That's my role. But those small cracks eventually became chasms. Then Emma started using Laura's words against me. One afternoon, after I told her she needed to finish an overdue history project, she muttered, right to my face, "Dad doesn't want me happy. He just wants me manageable." That stopped me cold, like a punch to the gut. When I asked where she'd heard that, she just shrugged, her eyes avoiding mine. Laura was right there, at the kitchen counter, phone face down. She never even looked up. I let it go. And that, I regret to say, became a pattern. Around the same time, Laura got weirdly protective of our family email account. We'd always shared it for everything, school, subscriptions, travel. Suddenly, she changed the password, claimed it was for spam. When I asked for the new password, she brushed me off. "I'll send it to you," she said. She never did. I should have pushed. I didn't. By then, I'd fallen into a bad habit of picking my battles, and far too many important things ended up in the not worth it tonight category. Then there was Jason, Laura's younger brother. He was 37, and honestly, he spent most of his adult life one bad month away from needing a handout. Rent, credit cards, unexpected fees. Planning was never Jason's strong suit. Laura had bailed him out before, usually from her personal money. I didn't love it, but figured it was her call. A few months before everything exploded, Jason called while I was in the room. I only heard Laura's side. "You don't have to explain it again," she said softly, almost conspiratorially. "I understand." A few minutes later, thinking I was upstairs, I heard her whisper, "Just don't make this a whole family trial." The next week, Jason hugged her longer than usual and said, "Seriously, Tess, thank you for not making this a whole family trial." It sounded rehearsed. When I asked Laura about it, she just rolled her eyes. He needed help. I helped. You don't have to audit every conversation I have with my brother. My questions, it seemed, had become the problem. My concern was just an inconvenience. And then, the moment that sparked the fire, the one that blew everything apart. Emma got accepted into a summer performance program. She's incredibly talented, loves performing. The acceptance email arrived and she was ecstatic. Laura was screaming with her, hugging her tight. I was beaming too, so proud of my girl. But then I scrolled down. The tuition was just under $8,400. And that didn't include travel, uniforms, fees, plus a non-refundable deposit. My smile tightened, turning into more of a grimace. That's a lot more than I expected, I said, a little too quietly, a little too carefully. Emma's face fell instantly. But I got in, she cried, her voice cracking. I know, honey, and that's amazing, I said, trying to reassure her. But getting accepted and paying for it are two different parts of the same conversation. Laura cut in, her voice sharp with irritation. Can we not do this right now? Turn the happiest thing that's happened to her all year into a budget meeting. I snapped back, my own patience worn thin. Can we read the payment page before we celebrate like this is already paid for? That's when Emma, looking confused and hurt, said, Mom said it was handled. I stared at Laura. Her eyes darted away. She mumbled, I said we would make it work. You told her she was going. I told her we weren't going to crush this for her. That wasn't an answer. Not even close. Later, after Emma was upstairs, I pressed her. Exactly what did you promise? She crossed her arms, defensive. I told her we believe in her. That's not what I asked. She already told her teacher, her friends. She's been waiting for this. I knew you'd come around, Laura said, defiantly. Come around. That phrase hit me like a knife. It meant the decision was already made, and my role was just to rubber stamp it after the fact. You don't get to make me the villain after you promised something we didn't agree to. There you go again, she scoffed. Villain rules agreements. She's 15, Mark. She needs someone to believe in her. I do believe in her. So where do you expect this money to come from? She answered too quickly, almost without thinking. Her college account. My stomach dropped. Emma had a college savings account we'd built for years. It wouldn't pay for all of college, but it was substantial. Birthday money, tax refunds, bonuses for my job. I'd poured so much into it. Laura had contributed too. The whole point was that it had a purpose. No, I said, firmly, my voice unwavering despite the shock. Laura laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Of course. No, not of course. I shot back. We can look at other options. Aid, payment plans, Emma contributing, cutting other spending. But I am not draining her college savings for summer program because you promised it without checking the cost. You always make love sound like a spreadsheet, she accused. And you keep making promises with money we haven't agreed to spend. That argument, I'm telling you, didn't stay private. Emma came downstairs halfway through. I don't know how much she heard, but she was already furious, her face tear-streaked. Why are you doing this? She cried. I'm trying to figure out how to make this work without taking money set aside for later, I explained, trying to keep my voice calm for her sake. Mom said you think the program's a waste. I never said that. You don't think it's worth investing in me? She screamed, fresh tears welling up. Laura immediately jumped in. That is not what I said. Emma snapped, looking straight at her mother. You literally said, Dad thinks I'll probably quit anyway. I looked at Laura, who wouldn't meet my gaze. Did you tell her that? I asked, my voice low. I said you worry she changes interests, Laura mumbled, refusing to look at me. That is not the same sentence. Emma was openly crying now, a terrifying mix of embarrassment, fear, and raw teenage rage. I got picked. Do you even get that? I finally got picked for something, and you're acting like I'm asking for a car. I understand how much it matters, I said, trying desperately to be calm, to reason with her. No, you don't, she sobbed. I'm not saying no to you, Emma. I'm saying no to pretending this money has no purpose. Laura interjected, cutting me off. She heard you. And then, the moment that burned itself into my memory. Emma looked straight at me, her eyes burning with fury and hurt. Maybe you should leave if money matters more than me. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. For a split second, her expression flickered, like she regretted it the instant they left her lips. I waited. I waited for Laura to correct her, to say, Don't say that to your father. Instead, Laura looked at me, her own face set, and said, This house would be lighter without your rules. That was the moment. Something inside me just stopped. I didn't yell. I didn't launch into the blistering speech that was forming in my head. I just walked upstairs, grabbed an old duffel bag, the one I always used for quick trips, threw in some clothes and toiletries, my charger, and came back down. Emma was on the stairs, looking scared now, her anger giving way to a flicker of dread. I looked at her, my heart aching with a pain I can barely describe. I'm leaving the fight, Sadas. I am not leaving my daughter. Laura's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. Don't make this dramatic. I looked at her, a strange, chilling calm settling over me. You both just told me to leave. Then I walked out the door. I stayed with a friend that night. Before I went to sleep, I did something I never thought I'd do. I logged into my payroll and changed my direct deposit. My paycheck would now go into an account only I controlled. I know that sounds drastic, maybe even cruel, but I didn't cut them off. The mortgage was already scheduled. I set up direct payments for utilities. I made sure Emma's insurance and normal expenses were covered. I transferred a reasonable amount for groceries into our shared account and texted Laura. I will pay bills. I will not fund surprises. My phone exploded. She called 11 times. Then Monica called. Then Russell. Then Laura again. My phone was on silent. By 7 a.m., I had 31 missed calls. But the one that really mattered came from a number I didn't recognize. The voicemail was from the summer program's billing office. They were trying to reach the responsible parent because the scheduled debit had failed and the payment deadline was fast approaching. My blood ran cold. I called back. Gave them my name, Emma's application info. They confirmed my number and the family email address. Then she mentioned your payment plan. I'm sorry, I said, my voice steady, despite the rising panic in my chest. I never agreed to be listed on that plan. A pause. Her tone shifted. She couldn't give me every detail, but confirmed I was listed as the responsible parent, my contact info was used, and there'd been an attempted debit for the first payment. Was there a signed authorization for me? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. She said she'd have to escalate that. I told her to note clearly that I disputed authorizing the payment plan and wanted my name removed unless they could show my explicit consent. She did. Before we hung up, she confirmed the deadline. That's when it clicked. This was why Laura was always so vague about dates. The deadline was now. I called Laura. She answered immediately, her voice dripping with accusation. Are you happy now? She practically spat. What payment plan did you put in my name? Silence. Then a small, tight voice. It's for Emma. I know what it's for. You were going to pay it anyway, weren't you? No, I wasn't. You were hoping I would pay it after you made it impossible for me to say no. Did you put my name down as the responsible parent? It asked for a parent. You're her father. Did you authorize payments using my information? I used the family account. Did you tell the program I agreed? She hung up. That's when I stopped thinking this was just a bad fight about parenting, about money. This was something else entirely. I tried to log into the family email again. Password changed. Again. I texted Laura, asking for access. No answer. So, I went to the one account I still had full access to, Emma's college savings. The balance was wrong. Seriously wrong. For a second, I thought I'd pulled up the wrong screen. Checked again. Then I pulled up the transaction history. Withdrawals. I'd never seen them before. They went back about 10 months. $2,000, $3,500, $1,200, other smaller amounts. And then, a $4,000 transfer that lined up almost exactly with the deposit and initial charges for Emma's summer program. The memos were short. See rent, urgent, legal, deposit. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I'd been arguing with Laura about whether to use Emma's savings. Laura had already been using them. I went back through our old texts. Months earlier, a message from Jason to Laura had accidentally gone to both of us because he'd replied to an old thread. You saved me. Seriously, I won't forget it. At the time, I'd assumed she'd covered one of his usual shortfalls with her own money. Now, I checked the date. It matched one of the larger withdrawals. I called Laura again. This time, I didn't ask about the summer program. What is C-rent? Nothing. Her voice was shrill, instantly defensive. I'm looking at Emma's account. Her voice changed completely, softening, almost pleading. Mark, what is C-rent? How much of our daughter's college money did you give Jason? He was going to lose his place, she wailed. How much? You don't understand what was happening. How much, Laura? My voice was quiet, but firm. I was putting it back. You were taking more out. He needed help with rent, then the card situation, then the legal fee. I closed my eyes, a wave of nausea washing over me. What legal fee? It wasn't criminal, if that's what you're trying to imply. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking why our daughter paid it. Don't say it like that. He's my brother, and she's our daughter. You have no idea what it's like to know your family has nobody else. That sentence. It sounded so familiar. Monica had said almost the same thing a few weeks earlier. I'd thought she was just complaining because I'd refused to lend Jason my car. Now I understood. A whole conversation had been happening around me, behind my back, using my daughter's future as leverage. You used our daughter's future to rescue your brother, I said, my voice barely a whisper, a cold, hard knot forming in my stomach. And then told her I was the one stealing from her. I never said that, she cried, but her denial was weak. You said I didn't think she was worth investing in. I was trying to keep everyone from falling apart. You picked me to be the bad guy, because you knew you'd already spent the money. I fired back, the dam finally breaking. You knew I'd say no. You didn't give me the chance. She started sobbing, truly sobbing. You're being cruel. I'll talk to you later, I said and hung up. Then I called Jason. He answered on the fourth ring. How much money did Laura give you? That's between me and my sister, he said immediately, his voice guarded. That answer tells me enough to keep asking. He sighed, a sound of defeat. I don't know the total. Did you know where it came from? She said she had money she could move around. Did you know it was Emma's account? He went quiet. The silence was deafening. Jason, I said, my voice dangerously low, a primal anger simmering beneath the surface. I knew some of it was from an account for Emma, he muttered, finally giving in. Yeah, I knew. I thought Laura had it handled. Handled how? She said it was temporary. Did you ever ask if I agreed? That's between you and Laura. No. It became between you and me when you accepted my daughter's money while helping my wife hide it. He got defensive then, his voice rising. I didn't ask where every dollar came from. You just admitted you knew where some of it came from. He muttered. I was in trouble. And now Emma is paying for it. He hung up. Within an hour, Monica called. She didn't ask what had happened. She just launched into a tirade, telling me that, according to her, I had abandoned my family over a disagreement. I had humiliated Laura by moving my paycheck. I was destroying Emma's summer opportunity because I needed to control everything. Did Laura tell you she took money out of Emma's account for Jason? I asked, cutting her off. A long pause. Then, Jason had nobody else. That was all the confirmation I needed. So you knew? I knew Laura helped her brother. I did not know every detail. Did you know she was telling Emma I was the reason the summer program might not happen? You were the reason it's not happening now. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the twisted, self-serving logic in her mind was so complete. Laura had spent the money, promised more money, put my name on a payment plan without asking, and somehow I was still the cause because I refused to keep the machine running. Russell called later. He was less aggressive, more tired. You two need to calm down. I'm calm, I said. You moved out. I was told to. You know how people talk when they're upset. I also know how bank transfers work when people are not upset. He got quiet. Then, your wife is under a lot of pressure. From whom? I asked. He didn't answer. Over the next 2 days, I stopped arguing and started documenting. The summer program emailed me confirmation that my contact info had been used. They also confirmed that after I disputed authorization, they couldn't treat me as the responsible party. I saved the email. I downloaded bank statements showing the withdrawals from Emma's savings. I lined up transfer dates with Jason's messages. I recovered access to the family email through the account recovery process. It was harder than it should have been. I didn't read every message, just searched for the program, Emma's account, and Jason. That was more than enough. There was an email thread where Laura filled in my name as the responsible parent for the program. And then a message from Laura to Jason that made me sit back in my chair, sick to my stomach. Mark can't know until after the deadline. If he sees the account before, then he'll shut everything down. Jason had replied, I hate that you're stuck in the middle. Laura wrote back, I'll handle him. I'll handle him. That was the part that kept coming back to me, echoing in my head. Not the money. Not even my name on the payment plan. I'll handle him. I had spent years thinking I was one half of a messy, complicated parenting partnership. Laura had started treating me like an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved. Emma called me that night. Her voice was flat, devoid of the usual teenage animation. Mom says you canceled the program. I disputed a payment plan I never agreed to. I corrected her gently. So you canceled it. I removed my name from something I didn't authorize. Same thing, she snapped. No, it isn't. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, her voice breaking, Mom said you think I'll quit anyway. That hurt more than the bank statements. I never said that. Sadas. You don't think I'm serious? I've driven you to rehearsals for years. I sat through the winter showcase when you had a fever and still insisted on performing. I paid for lessons. I helped build the practice schedule you complained about and then followed. Why would I do all that if I thought you weren't serious? Then why won't you pay? Because there are things you don't know yet. Like what? I couldn't tell her over the phone that her mother had been using her college money to bail out her uncle. So I said, things your mom and I need to explain to you together. She snapped, the anger returning. That's what adults say when they don't want to answer. She hung up. I sat with that for a while. She wasn't entirely wrong. Laura accused me of financial abuse the next day. A long text, moving my paycheck was controlling. She was afraid she couldn't buy groceries. I was using money to punish her. That hit me hard because I know separating finances can be used that way, for control. So, I checked myself. Had I cut her off from essentials? No. Stopped shared obligations? No. Frozen money she legally needed? No. I had redirected my future pay, kept household bills current, and stopped allowing unchecked spending from accounts mostly funded by my income. After discovering the hidden withdrawals, I replied once. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, and Emma's normal expenses are covered. I will not place my paycheck into an account being used for undisclosed transfers. If you want to call that control, we can discuss it with a counselor or mediator. But hiding spending and then making me responsible for it is not a system I am continuing. Her reply, you always need an audience for your rules. I didn't answer. Then Monica invited everyone to dinner. Her text said, we need to sit down like adults before this family gets destroyed over money. I almost refused. But then Valerie, Laura's aunt, a straight shooter, called me. She'd heard Monica's version and initially thought I was overreacting. I don't know it's true, Mark, but Monica's telling people you took your money and walked out because Emma got into a program you didn't want to pay for. That is not what happened, I said, a sigh escaping my lips. Then come and say what happened once, Valerie urged. Don't keep fighting through other people. I agreed. I texted Laura. I would discuss the finances openly if she continued making accusations in front of Emma and the family. Her response, do whatever makes you feel powerful. She still thought this was about winning. The dinner was at Monica and Russell's place. I brought a few printed statements, tucked discreetly into my phone case. No binder. No dramatic stack of papers. I didn't need one. Emma was there, which I had mixed feelings about. Part of me wanted her nowhere near this. Another part knew she'd already been dragged in. Laura sat beside her, radiating a nervous tension. Jason was across from me, looking anywhere but at me. Monica started before anyone had finished eating. I think we all agree Emma should not be punished because her parents disagree. Agreed, I said calmly. Laura seized the moment. Then tell her why you canceled her summer. I looked at Emma. She wouldn't look back at me. I didn't cancel her summer. I removed myself from a payment agreement I never approved. Technicalities. Monica scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. No, consent is not a technicality, I said calmly, my voice unwavering. When someone puts your name on a financial obligation, Laura shook her head, almost frantic. You're making it sound like fraud. I'm saying you listed me as responsible for payments without asking me. You're her father. That does not make every form you fill out in my name valid. Russell rubbed his forehead, looking exhausted. Monica said, This is exactly what I mean. Everything with you becomes legal language and rules. Then let's make it simple, I said. I pulled out the 2 bank statements. I put the first one, the one from 10 months ago, on the table. This was the balance in Emma's college savings 10 months ago. Then I placed the most recent one beside it. This is the balance now. Emma finally looked. Her eyes widened. Laura gasped, a strangled sound. Mark, don't. I asked you privately, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. You kept telling people I was withholding money from our daughter, so we're going to be accurate. Nobody needs every private financial detail, Monica fumed, her face reddening. I looked at her directly. You called me abusive because I stopped funding an account you knew was being used to support Jason. Jason shifted in his chair, suddenly very small. Emma looked from him to her mother, a dawning horror in her eyes. I pointed to the withdrawals on the statement. $2,000 marked C rent. $3,500. $1,200 marked legal. Other transfers. And then for $1,000 connected to the summer deposit. What is C rent? Emma asked, her voice small, barely a whisper. Nobody answered immediately. That silence did more than I ever could have with words. She looked at Jason. Jason mumbled, Your mom helped me with some stuff. Emma turned to Laura, her face a mask of confusion and pain. With my college money? Laura stammered. It was supposed to be temporary. I was going to replace it. Emma's face changed again. Not into anger at first, just utter devastation. You told me Dad didn't want to use the college account because he didn't believe in me. Laura stammered. That is not what I meant. I opened the billing email on my phone and slid it across the table for them to see. I also did not agree to the payment plan. My name was entered as the responsible parent. Because you are the responsible parent, Laura insisted, her voice shrill, desperate. Valerie, who had been quiet, just observing, spoke up. That is not the same thing as agreeing to a payment plan. Monica snapped. Valerie, stay out of it. You invited me, Valerie said pointedly. I almost smiled. But this was not a satisfying moment. This was watching my daughter realize that the adults around her had been using her dream as a weapon, as a pawn in their own twisted games. I showed the final email message. The one where Laura wrote Jason that I couldn't know about the account until after the program deadline, because he'll shut everything down. Jason stared at the table, his face ashen. Laura cried. You went through my messages? I recovered access to the family email account you changed the password on. I countered, my voice weary. This was in an account we both used for family finances. You had no right. You used that same account to put my name on a payment plan. Monica broke in, her voice strained. This is getting vicious. That's when Valerie asked the question that ended the spinning, the one that cut through all the noise. She looked at Laura and said, Did you tell Emma where the money really went? Laura didn't answer. Valerie asked again, her voice soft but firm. Did you tell her? Mom, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Laura said, I was going to replace it. That's not what she asked, Emma said, her eyes fixed on her mother. Laura started crying, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I was trying to keep everyone from falling apart. Emma stared at her, her voice barely a whisper, filled with a heartbreaking clarity. Did Dad actually say I wasn't worth it? Laura shook her head. Not exactly. Did he say he thought I would quit? I said he worries that you change interests. Did he say the program was a waste? He said it was expensive. Emma's voice got smaller, almost childlike in its vulnerability. So, Was I mad at him for something you did? Laura exploded, all pretense of apology gone.
No, this is not all on me.
Your father left. He moved his money.
He stopped the payment.
He made everything 10 times worse. I left after both of you told me to leave. I said, my voice rising, finally losing some of my carefully constructed calm. You know she didn't mean it. Laura snapped back, the anger in her voice piercing. Emma flinched. I wish I hadn't said the next part in front of everyone, but I did. The words just came out. You did, I told Laura, looking her directly in the eyes. And even if you take back the sentence, you still spent 10 months making sure Emma saw me as the reason she couldn't have what she wanted. You told her I was stealing her dream while you were spending the money behind her back. Laura threw her hands up, defeated, desperate. Jason was going to lose his place. His credit cards were maxed. He had legal bills. Mom was scared. Dad was stressed. What was I supposed to do?
Tell me.
You would have said no. Then you would have had an answer you didn't like. I said, my voice heavy. That is different from not having a choice. Monica chimed in. A husband who loves his family does not make his wife beg while her brother is in crisis. And a grandmother who loves her granddaughter. I retorted, looking right at Monica, my gaze unflinching, should not treat that granddaughter's college savings like the family emergency fund. Monica went quiet. That's enough. Russell finally boomed, slamming his hand on the table. For once, I agreed with him. I stated my decision. My name was removed from the summer payment plan irrevocably. My income was staying separate. I would continue paying essential household costs directly while Laura and I arranged a formal separation. Any money returned by Jason would go back to Emma's account. Laura would create a written repayment plan for the rest. I wanted Emma to see a counselor. She'd been put in the middle of an adult financial conflict, and we had both contributed to that in different ways. And no, I was not moving back home. So that's it. Laura cried, tears streaming down her face, her voice thin with despair. 12 years and you're done, because I helped my brother? No, I said, looking at her, my voice clear and firm. I'm separating because you hid money. Used our daughter's savings, put a financial obligation in my name, and told our child I was the reason her future wasn't being supported. Helping Jason is the explanation you keep giving for the first lie. It does not explain the rest. You're punishing the family. I am not punishing the family. I am removing my name from decisions I was never allowed to make. Jason finally spoke, meekly. I'll pay it back. I looked at him. All of it. He hesitated. That told everyone how realistic that promise was. Then put it in writing, I said. And start. The summer program didn't hold Emma's spot. Because the payment plan was disputed and the deadline passed without valid payment, the place went to someone else. That was the hardest consequence to accept. Emma had earned that acceptance. She didn't steal money. She didn't put my name on a form. She was 15, angry, and had believed what her mother told her. But the program still had a deadline, and I was not willing to validate an unauthorized financial agreement just to prevent an immediate disappointment. For about 2 weeks, Emma was furious with both of us. She barely answered my texts. Laura told me I had proven that being right mattered more to me than our daughter. Part of me wondered if she was right. I could have paid and fought later. I thought about it more than once. But every version of that choice ended with the same problem. Laura would have learned that if she made a promise big enough, involved Emma early enough, and waited until the deadline was close enough, I would still be forced to pay. I couldn't keep teaching that lesson to either of them. Jason did sign a repayment agreement. It wasn't impressive. He couldn't magically produce the money, so it was monthly payments that would take time. And for the first time, Monica didn't immediately rescue him from the obligation. Laura also agreed in writing to replace what she'd taken from Emma's account over time. Our finances became separate, except for clearly defined shared expenses. Some of Laura's relatives still thought I'd gone too far, that I was heartless. Monica still told people I'd publicly humiliated Laura. And she wasn't entirely wrong. The truth did come out in front of people. I could have handled that part privately, sure. But by the time we sat at that table, the false version was already public inside the family, and Emma was sitting there believing I had denied her because I didn't believe in her. I decided I would rather be criticized for correcting that in the room where it had been repeated than continue protecting the lie. Valerie checked on Emma afterward, which I appreciated. Russell mostly stopped calling me. Monica did not apologize. Jason eventually did, but it was awkward. He said I should have asked more questions. I told him he knew enough to ask one. Yeah, he said, that was the first useful thing he had said to me about it. The most important conversation happened between Emma and me about 3 weeks after the dinner. We were sitting outside a small coffee shop after one of her counseling appointments. For a while, she just moved the ice around in her drink, not looking at me. Then she said, "Did you really leave because of what I said?" I told her, partly. Her eyes filled immediately with tears. "Not because I stopped being your dad," I quickly clarified, my voice soft. "I left because staying in that room was going to make the fight worse. It was becoming toxic." "But you packed a bag," she whispered, her voice small. "I thought you were done with us." I should have made it clearer that I was leaving the fight, Sadas. Not leaving you. She looked down. "I said you should go." "You did." I didn't know what I was saying, but I know I said it. I nodded. She asked, "Were you mad at me?" "Yes," I said, honestly, without hesitation. She looked surprised. "I was hurt. I was angry. You're allowed to know that. But being hurt by something you said does not make me stop being your father." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Mom says you made her look like a liar." "Your mom lied," I said simply. "That's not the same thing." "No. Making someone look like a liar means the facts are being twisted. Telling the truth about a lie is different." She frowned, thinking this over. "You always talk like that." "Like what?" "Like there's a definition for everything." I smiled a little. "Occupational hazard of being your annoying dad." She almost smiled too. Then she said, "I'm sorry I told you to leave. And I'm sorry I left without making sure you understood where I was going and what I meant." That was the first conversation we had where neither of us tried to settle the entire family situation. We just dealt with what had happened between us. Over the next few months, Laura and I moved into a formal legal separation. There was no dramatic final scene, no screaming in a courthouse, no last-minute reconciliation. We wrote down who paid what. We agreed on Emma's schedule. We kept the college account restricted so neither of us could withdraw from it alone, with clear rules. Laura stayed in counseling. Emma kept seeing hers. Laura and I were civil some days, tense on others. She still believed I had been too rigid. I still believed she had spent years turning my boundaries into a personality defect, so she would never have to be the one who said no. Those two beliefs were not easy to reconcile. Emma didn't get the private summer program. Instead, a few months later, she enrolled in a smaller local performance class that cost a fraction of the price. At first, she treated it like a consolation prize. Then she started liking it. Not because it was secretly better than the program she lost. It probably wasn't. She liked it because she was still performing, still improving, and no one had to empty an account or lie to get her through the door. Our relationship took longer. She still got irritated when I asked about assignments. I still said no sometimes. The difference was that when she thought I was being unfair, she started asking me directly instead of assuming she already knew why. And I stopped letting Laura be the translator between me and my own daughter. The first weekend Emma came to stay with me under the new schedule, she showed up carrying the same old duffel bag I had packed the night I left. I recognized it immediately. "You know we own other bags," I said, trying to be light, trying to make a joke. She looked down at it, then back at me. "I know. You want a different one." She shook her head. "No. This one already knows the way back." I didn't say anything clever. I just took the bag from her and carried it inside. For years, I thought being the responsible one meant accepting that everyone would resent me a little, as long as the bills were paid and the family stayed together. I don't think that anymore. The bills are still paid. Emma still rolls her eyes when I remind her to bring her charger. Laura and I are still separated. Jason is still making payments. Nothing became neat. But I am no longer financing promises I never made. And I am no longer letting silence turn me into the villain in my daughter's story. When Emma comes over now, that duffel bag usually lands by the door, a familiar, comforting sight. It used to be the bag I carried when I was told to leave. Now it is the bag she brings when she comes back.